It's early, so it's a good time for radical thoughts. And the radical thought I have for you this morning is, we often, inadvertently, approach our students in the classrooms as problems to be solved or issues to be corrected. What happens if we change that attitude and consider the students co-investigators, colleagues, inquisitors like we are, on the questions that have no clear answer? One definition of rhetoric I really like is the definition of how do we make decisions when we don't have all the information we'd like to have. We're facing that, right? In November. Yeah, we don't like to think about that. But what happens if we change the classroom to be one, instead of thinking of it as problem solving, i.e. these students need to do things correctly, to problem posing education? Here's a problem we all face. What do you think? Here's what I think. What do you think? Something comes out of that. That's the nature of including debate in the public speaking classroom. Now, the preamble I'll give you to this talk is that it's going to be really short, and I could go on a long time about this because I think about this a lot, about how to teach debate and how to teach argument. I direct the debate team here. This is where we meet. This is where we practice, and this is where I do a lot of really strange and kind of frightening teaching. Douglas Enninger in the 1950s put it best. He said, when you choose to debate with someone, you're choosing to recognize them as a fully functioning, rational human being. That's big. You believe that they are worth engaging with. If you don't think someone's worth engaging with, that they're below human, you take other steps to correct their opinions. As we look at the cascading, violent global conflict that faces us today. If you're Hillary Clinton, you're in a real bind, because there's a societal expectation that you debate. But does this Enninger conference of rationality and seriousness come along with that? So are there limits to what's debated? This is always something that is pretty hot and talked about immediately. So the goal today is that to make you more comfortable with this idea, there's no obligation for you to include debate in your public speaking class, absolutely none. And you can include it any way you wish, at all. And I think you'll like it. I suffer from a malaise that I get bored with my own curriculum instantly. The day I hand out the syllabus, I'm like, I've done it wrong. This is going to be boring and horrible. Why did I do this? And then I write pages of notes for next semester in hopes to avoid this tragedy. Whereupon it happens again. It's about to happen again when I print my syllabus out and be like, this is going to be a disaster. So I'm always looking for new things to include. And one of the things about debate is it makes the public speaking classroom a place of inquiry and problem posing education, which is a phrase I'm getting from Paulo Freire, who Flora talked about a lot of his ideas in her talk. The Brazilian educator who said that most famously that what education is not banking. It's not, I'm going to take all the information I have and deposit into your head and then withdraw it on demand in an exam. That's not teaching. That's discipline. That's creating good little subjects for capitalism or oligarchical democracy or whatever we have. But education is actually getting people to realize they have the tools and abilities to solve problems themselves. So, Deborah Tannen, I put this quote up here, it's kind of lengthy, but I think it's worth reading. She's a big critic of argument. She wrote this book, The Argument Culture. You may have read it. She's a linguist at Georgetown. She writes lots of popular press books. This is, I think, a pretty good quote. Take a minute to read it, about debate in the classroom, and it might be something that you might imagine it to look like. Any reaction to this quote from Tannen? Does Is this something that has been in your experience, maybe as a student yourself, or maybe you've tried to do debate and you ended up with something like this? Yes, sir.
I think you don't know what you've got until you show it to somebody else. You really don't. I mean, whether it's a thesis or an essay, I mean, unless you show it to somebody else, you really don't know what you've got. So, I mean, I was a debater too when I was in college. You really don't know what you've got at the end of the debate until you've digested it all. And the person, you know, generally the teacher or the coach, comes up and shows you. It's at the end. It's at the end.
Right.
I guess the best thing to do is to not concern yourself about whether nobody has all the facts.
Right.
You don't. And you must make do with what you've got. And it's how you use what you've got that counts. But I want to ask you questions. One of the things I do in my class is have the students read great speeches.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book called The Great Speeches in History. It starts off with the first speech by Berkeley, goes all the way up to Bill Clinton. And I make them read the speeches because William Safire, remember William Safire?
Yep.
He wrote a book called, he edited a book of speeches called Lend Me Your Ears. And in it he said that one of the ways to make a great public speaker is to read great speeches. Just like when you learn the piano. Learn the piano. What are the exercises? The exercises of a classical composer, Schubert, Chopin, and so on. It's only by acquainting yourself with the great that you can get to read it. And if you read it aloud, does it or does it not have an effect on how you speak?
Oh, I think that's great. I mean, modeling is good like that. I mean, the thing about talking about learning to play the piano is interesting because as a metaphor it works pretty well. Stable instrument, unstable audience, unstable player. The player and the audience are always changing. The instrument seems stable, voice. It works pretty well, but through history, when you look at different compositions, the piano as an instrument has changed radically too. So that's something that has to be factored in there as well. Is that what counts as a good speech has not remained static. And what people expect in a speech has not remained static. Those things always change, so I would say it's good as long as we keep attention to that fluidity. Because what we want to do is prepare our students not to satiate our desires for the good, but give them the tools to recognize the good in the social situations that they will be in, where they are called upon to speak, or where they're called upon to address, or even where they're called upon to be consumers of speech and make judgment. You know, krisis, this very important word in Aristotle. How to make those judgments, because what's at stake is this incredibly fluid societal organization. And what counts as a good speech now is very, very different than something in the 19th century. You compare Donald Trump to, which a lot of people think he's giving these amazing speeches for a lot of people. I don't think that they're very good, but that's not, the experts' call isn't relevant when you're talking about this kind of judgment and decision-making, meaning-making. So I think doing it in that way, calling the students' attention as an audience to say, look at how this instrument has changed, I think can be pretty enlightening for understanding what Chopin is up to versus Beethoven, or what Mozart's up to, or Salieri, or whoever you're doing. You know, because the big innovation of the piano post Beethoven is the release, the hammer release. To be able to do that was a weird mechanical thing that no one had thought how to do. And then you also have the harpsichord too. So a lot of things that were composed for harpsichord are played on piano. Just like a lot of our tropes and a lot of our things that were composed for a more agrarian society, or however you want to define America, are now played on an instrument that is post-industrial, post-mass culture, post-industrial service economy. And we're still playing tropes that were composed for agrarian transitioning to manufacturing. And that, I think, is totally fascinating to think about. That's a great question. So, yes?
I think one thing I really like about this book, too, is it really brings up this idea, this common fear of failure.
That's right.
Whether it's failing while you're actually in the debate, you don't want to be wrong, because then you'll feel like you failed. And then a lot of students equate that to, then I'm going to do poorly on the assignment. But also the fear of the students that are not participating. It may not be because they're not engaged, it may just be because they're afraid of saying something that's incorrect.
That's right. And also, debate is a negative thing. An argument is a negative thing. People think of that as a failure of communication. I'll use Juliet as an example. She said the students were engaged in a debate almost over the edge to argument, and we needed to pull it back, like they were careening. Right? It's interesting.
They were screaming at each other.
But no scholar of debate or argument would consider screaming to be inclusive of those discourse forms. Right? So it's interesting how the culture determines what those discourse forms will be. And also the teacher's passivity is like, I think is a real problem.
Well, when I was reading the quote, it sounds like they were arguing and being dramatic because they hadn't done enough research to calmly state their position. And because of that, they all started just grabbing at straws and getting excited.
Yeah.
So it's really, it reminds me of what Flora said about research, is that the people have to know what they're talking about and then calmly just keep bringing up points and not getting excited. So she obviously wasn't running the class that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway from this is debate is a hands-on assessment. It's not you saying, democracy, it always works, but let them go, look at how they're, it's not like that at all. It's something that's going to require a lot of planning and a lot of engagement from you. Maybe not in your traditional feeling as the expert, like I know what the correct answer is, but how did you react as someone who's thought more about speech and public speaking than the students have? That's an important contribution to the class where you're going to do something. Even if you're not doing debate, it's an important contribution to the class to say, well, here's how that speech made me feel. It gets the students to kind of think about different ways of looking at speech. Like Sheldon was talking about, different ways of looking at speech they might not have considered. Like, these old dusty speeches, what did they say? Oh, look at that. That's something we're still dealing with. That stuff can come up quite a bit. So there are 4 things you need to consider if you're going to put debate into your classroom. What's the purpose of doing it? What topic are you going to have them debate about? What are the rules for the debate? How are you going to structure it? And how is the debate going to be evaluated? That's grading and also just quality from the student's point of view. Did they like it? Did they find it rewarding? You can have students who get a C and they still say, oh, this was great. I really liked it. I've had that experience doing debates in the class, which is kind of weird to have that happen. So what is the purpose of having debate in the classroom? Well, this is something I think everyone can answer on their own. But the way I feel is our purpose here is, like I said earlier, is to equip our students to be able to make judgments about what is good speech in the situations they find themselves in later in their educational career or graduate school or at a PTA meeting or wherever life takes them. That's the goal. So structuring a debate with that in mind, instead of it needs to be good argument or they need to have 5 pages of facts or we really need to make sure that they don't go over time. All those things are important. But you want to keep in mind the educational purpose of having the debate. It's not just to sort of have fun or to let them blow off steam like we saw in the example. But the purpose is to make them better speakers. But this is the difference between outlining a certain way to give a speech and saying these are the 5 things you need to do to have a good speech without context. Or saying, what were some of the things in that debate, even though they were captured by the heat of the moment? What are some of the things in that debate that were good practices for speech? And they say, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And we say, where does that come from? Because speech is kind of a strange thing, isn't it? It's something like arguing and speaking. It's not something anyone formally taught us to do until they walk into your classroom. It might be their first public speaking class. But they have been trying to persuade people their whole life that their view of the world is the correct one, and people who are not on board are dumb, or foolish, or willfully evil, and need to be dismissed. And this is kind of the attitude people have about speech and argument. This is probably the first formal training they've had in it. So it's something to keep in mind is that it's a contradiction. William Burroughs, the great writer, he said that speech is a virus that, when we're a baby, infects our throat and lives here. And it's a symbiotic organism that lives in our throat. He's kind of a weird 1950s writer. I don't know if you know Burroughs. He said it was the word virus is what infects us, and we can't live with it, and we can't live without it. So that's like a weird pseudo-biological model of speech that you might present your students with. Have them run out the door and transfer to someone else's class like they often do for me. Yes?
When I've used debate in the classroom, I I usually try to approach it from not making them better speakers, not making them better arguers, but opening themselves up to the opposite point of view. And that's the critical question. To get them to think about what are all the other arguments that go against their argument and how they would address that, how would they counter that argument. I think that makes them think a little bit more deeply about the issue at hand, even more so than the actual speaking. I like them to be open-minded to opposite points of view, even if they don't agree with it, and be able to come up with good counter-arguments that would support their point of views. I think that the thinking, the critical thinking piece is, what I get them to say, open up, don't just, we become resistant when we have a point of view, we are sometimes resistant to anything that goes against our point of view, and I want them not to do that.
Right. So I think that's very important, and that's something that happens when you teach debate, and I think it needs to be guided a bit. But it does happen within a context of saying, what are those things that were good speech moves? Because excellent speech moves break through that shell, that exterior shell. So the writer Chogyam Trungpa, who's a Tibetan writer, writes about how we spend most of our lives making a cocoon around ourselves, that we paint on the inside what we want the world to look like when we walk around with this cocoon. So the trick is how we break light through the cocoon and get people to see that there's more than just their own perspectives. I think debate's a good way of doing it. A lot of students will see it as facts trumping facts kind of contest. If we go the strict critical thinking route. And I think a lot of instructors are somewhat comfortable with that, but I think it's fine. But the public speaking's unique buy-in on this level is to say the way I speak and the tone and the words I choose can be secret strategies that, to use a distasteful military metaphor, become force multipliers that help us attack and get into many different aspects on the idea of open-mindedness. And also the discomfort with uncertainty that students often find, like, I don't really know, and they have to debate it anyway. That also leads to open-mindedness because it gives them sort of a taste for what it's like to be confronted with not knowing what the best argument is, or that even if there is there a counter response? Is there a good counter to that? We might not know. In fact, sometimes 20 years later, the good counter comes out in the New York Times for some argument long ago. We're like, aha, I knew it. Like some document will appear, and people are like, yes, I'm vindicated. People will be like, uh-oh. You're in trouble. But that's a good point. Critical thinking often is the side effect of doing this as a speech activity. But I don't want you to feel pressure that you have to be like the master of all political controversy. And going to teach this, all you have to do is know speech. And you can say, well, I don't really know, but I can tell you what was effective and what was not in the presentation of those arguments. So you can go that way too. You don't have to be like, I need to be up on everything happening in the Sri Lankan government, everything happening with Thailand's constitutional reforms, everything happening with the Japanese Prime Minister's cabinet shake-up, everything happening with the Chinese devaluation of their currency. I mean, the list goes on and on and on about what you need to be aware of to teach debate. But you don't have to, you can be like, look, I'm just like the co-investigator. I don't know. Okay, so how do we come up with a topic? And this is where a lot of times debate stuff goes wrong in the classroom. A topic is a statement that you can either agree or disagree with, and is never a question. So the shorthand of this is if you've seen it done on a cable news debate, it's inappropriate for the classroom. If you've seen it done on a national network debate, it's inappropriate for the classroom. Because you won't get something you can really evaluate, or that will be satisfying for the students as an educational activity. You say, what should we do about the economy? What are you going to get? If you have 4 debaters and you have 4 separate speeches, none of which engage each other. So you'll have exactly what the 2 parties want the debate to want. No engagement, no capacity for judgment, lots of generation of sound bites that will be repeated over and over again in the news cycle to get you to become more familiar and comfortable with your candidate's tone, approach, and verbiage. Because a lot of it's about identification rather than issues. So instead of that, it might be that instead of saying, what should we do about the economy, you might say for your class, the United States should have a VAT tax like the European Union. That could be the topic. If that interests you. The cool thing is you can pick what interests you. And pretend as if it was the most relevant, controversial thing in the world. Students won't know. And they'll be like, wow, this is so cool. And it might get them to go and research other things as well. Also, with coming up with a topic, you want to consult the librarians, I think, too. Very helpful in this kind of thing. There's all kinds of great resources to go to look for things you might want. But I'm also available to help you, and the debate team is available to help you. I've often sent students from our debate team to people's classes to model a debate for the students in the class. When they see their peers do it, it becomes a little bit more, less scary and kind of more fun. Also, they find somebody who they fall in love with often because of their amazing speaking style. I want to be that person. And then they want to do that. But I'm happy to set it up for you. It's easy for us to do. And it's also an obligation of the debate team members if they want to go to cool competitions, they have to do this. So they'll be lining up to come to your 9 a.m. Friday morning public speaking class to do a demo debate. Don't worry, we'll get them there. Cattle prod or whatever we have.
Steve, within a 15-week semester
Yes.
of a public speaking class, where do you traditionally, or where do you usually, or maybe it's not usually, introduce the debate? As you're preparing for persuasive speeches, do you probably use it throughout your course as you were talking?
Yeah, I haven't done it in years,
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure
Well,
why.
I'm
I
just
used to
trying
do it
think
as a...
methodologically,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would challenge you to use it as a replacement
Mhm.
for a major assignment. And that raises the stakes for you as well as for them.
Right.
Instead of this is something we're just going to do for fun, you might not be happy with it. The students might be like, well, that was cool because I didn't have to do anything, because I didn't have to worry about my hay. And they're like, I loved it. It's not what we want. But a lot of times people think of debate, like in the example, as kind of a blow off, let's all blow off some steam kind of activity. Instead of, well, this is going to be a formal thing. I haven't done it in a long time. Maybe I should do it again. But I don't often teach in terms of modalities. I don't teach informative persuasive. I teach in terms of, here are some weird texts. What do you think about these weird texts? Articulate them for us. And through that, we can say, well, were they trying to persuade us or inform us? I think raising these kind of questions give the students kind of a sensibility that's really essential in today's political environment, where what purports to be information is persuasion, and what purports to be persuasive is informative. So 2 examples real quick is that, a politician will say, well, these are the facts about the economy. And of course, when you look at it, you're like, well, you could read these in several ways, because we're all well-educated, intelligent people. We'll go and look at we'll actually click the New York Times and they can look at the data and say, well, I guess you can say that, but is that the most convenient? And we're all academics, so we're like, well, maybe. And then the other side of it is you have the New York Department of Health running these sort of like propaganda-style smoking commercials that are like dramatic and horror. They're like horror movies, 20-second long horror movies about people's fingers getting cut off. I mean, it's awful. It's like Saw 5 or something. And that is like the model of propaganda that is information. And then we have propaganda as information. So it's really the time to develop critical hermeneutic. Florida's not here, but her mentor Neil Postman would say what we need to do is work on developing students' built-in crap detectors. Right? That's what he says in his book, Television, the Teaching Language. Here are 3 sources. I don't know how I'm doing on time here, Jeremiah. Maybe about... We're good. Okay. So 3 sources I want to quickly have a look at of places where you can come up with a topic that you might not know anything about. If you really want to be brave, you can pick something you don't know anything about and something students don't know anything about. These are controversy metrics. And I'll click here for you. So one of my favorite sites to find things to study for my teaching of debate is a site called BioEdge. It's out of Australia, and it's the global bioethics news. Like, what are governments doing with medical and scientific data compelling their citizens to do? So Kuwait has become the first country to demand a universal DNA test if you want to get a passport. You have to provide your DNA, and they're going to do DNA screening and all this. And people think it's a ruse to make sure that more full-blooded Kuwaitis get access to state services rather than people who are less pure. That sounds kind of frightening. Sounds Nazi style, right? A little Nazi style passport. And these are all great things to print out and hand out to your students. And you might find them to be really interested in this. I found my students very interested and very concerned about issues like human trafficking, very concerned about issues like reproductive rights. And you would never know that they were so concerned or they thought this is the heart of their politics. Very different from what I think are the political issues. I grew up in the 80s, so I'm always concerned about nuclear weapons and things like that. But they're not. That doesn't move the needle for them.
Well,
Yeah. So they're interested in these other things. So I mean, you can do any of this stuff, and it would be good. This is great. This just goes on and on and on forever.
All bad news.
Yeah, it's all like controversies it's all controversies about how governments use scientific data. Most of our students come in with the attitude that science is going to save us from emotion, bad logic, bad reasoning. But what we find is that scientific data often serves poor logic, bad reasoning, and science often serves wonderfully beautiful, wonderful, fuzzy fascist ideas about how we should run our governments and take care of people and all this kind of stuff. So we have to be careful. But this is a good place to talk about that in your class if you wish. So BioEdge is a good one. The news map is a weird one. I absolutely love. This is an aggregate website of all of the things people are clicking on the internet as far as news headlines. So the size of it shows you a visual of how many people around the world have clicked on that news story. The color shows you what type of news it is, and the darker it is how long ago it was clicked on. If it's brighter, it was clicked on recently. If it's darker, it was clicked on a while ago. And
So how do you just click on it and it gives you
yeah, it gives you the news story. But this also gives you an index of what are people, instead of working this morning, what are people clicking on in the window? They're hiding behind Excel in their cubicle. And what are they reading about? I mean, obviously we see some stuff about Djokovic, that's important. Gene Wilder, of course, is sad. And then Donald Trump stuff is always huge.
Is it arranged by country? If I can see the
Yeah, you can filter it by country. So we can kick everybody out except the UK. So let's kick everybody out but the UK and see what the UK is doing. So that's how it's, see how it's different? I don't see Trump anywhere. That's the biggest difference, right?
Then no news.
It's Ethiopia.
Pretty interesting, huh?
Ethiopia.
Who?
It's this
Oh,
page.
I believe in Trump.
We can also do Canada, our neighbors, so that's everybody.
Oh.
Across the top is different countries. So we can do Canada, see what that looks like. Might take it a minute. Because I accidentally hit everybody, so it's like, shh, didn't go through all of it. But this is something you can even bring up in the talk about what would make a good topic.
Let them choose.
If something is popular, does that make it a good topic? Well, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe if something's unpopular, it's a more superior topic. People aren't paying attention to it, so maybe it's our obligation as public intellectuals or intellectuals of some type to engage with this and to speak about it. And also the students, you might consider having them maybe do a invitational event at the end of your debate, if you do at the end of the year, like get a bigger room, invite people, invite the department. We used to do a public debate competition between sections, so I would have, this is when I was a grad student, and oddly I think I could get away with a lot more as a grad student than I can now, but I did, yeah, Canada's like,
Oh.
Wow,
Oh.
that's sad.
yeah, it's slowly getting the Canadian news. I don't know why. But my friend who I play PS4 with always says Canadian internet is bad. I guess he's right. Anyway, the issue is for things like this is like you can bring up to your class and be like, what interests you? What might be? And oddly, it might not. They might find discomfort the fact it's not something they know a lot about. Because oftentimes our model of debate is, well, I know what's right here, so I'm going to go out and use debate like a hammer and bang all the crooked nails flat. And that's the model of debate we often have, is a corrective that serves the truth. We can think about debate in other ways like this, like what she said, open-mindedness training, or controversy, comfort with controversy training. So yeah, this isn't working too well. You can also, at the bottom here, do it by type of news, so you can eliminate all the sports or entertainment news that you want. Well, anyway, that's that. And then, well, that doesn't seem to want to work, but opposing viewpoints is through our library, and if you speak to librarians about doing a debate or doing controversial topics in the classroom, they'll point you to opposing viewpoints, which is a wonderful database where you look for the issue, and they've already aggregated in a professional way all the top research on that topic. So it's a good starting place for students to look to see how the debate shapes up. There might be a place you send them to say, well, go find it on opposing viewpoints, maybe we'll debate it. And if they come back with a pretty good, you can even do an assignment where you do presentations about what the topic should be. That's a good persuasive speech practice. That way, and it also has the unique advantage of appealing directly to the people in the audience that they're speaking to, other students in the class. Like oftentimes we have them speaking to some imaginary audience, like senators. I rise today in support of medical marijuana, and everyone's like Facebooking. I mean, maybe the Congress people do that. I don't know, maybe it's more realistic than we think. But we have them addressing these fantasy audiences. That's fine. But maybe we also want them to speak to their own peers. These are the people who they're going to be in solidarity with about political issues. These are the people they're going to be in economic solidarity with, and they already have that identity. Loans, oh my God, in debt already. They have that. These are also going to be people they're going to build political and professional networks with 20 years down the line. Let's have them start communicating with each other now and try to persuade each other now and see what works and what doesn't. And it's sort of a realistic counterweight to, I'm addressing the Senate subcommittee on small arms. We're going to ban handguns for the 500 millionth time in a public speaking class, and it's going to be successful as it always is, right? Okay, so here are questions you need to think about as far as the rules. So now you have your topic, or a way to a topic. How do we come up with the rules for the debate? These are the questions you have to answer. How long should each person speak? This is a technical as well as evaluative question. How many people are going to participate in each debate? How many days do you want to give to this? You can come up with any debate model you want, as long as it has basic rules like this. This is all a debate really needs to answer to be one. There's no formal, I can show you the format that we do here. I think the format is unsuitable for educational debating for a number of reasons. The primary one is that it's designed to serve the expedient needs of the tournament model of competition, and not necessarily a classroom where we'll have 20 or 30 minutes of reflection at the end. So, what's the speech time? Make sure they take turns speaking. Make sure there's a questioning period of some kind. There's lots of different ways to do that. And also this question of evidence. If you're going to have them do research for the speech, what counts as the evidence? When should be submitted? What's a fair amount of time to give the other side the evidence? So one mean way you can do this is have them research and prepare the speeches for their side. And on the day of the debate, you have them exchange packets. Oh, by the way, you're going to do their side. So they've just researched and prepared all this stuff for the other side that they thought was their amazing cool arguments. They just gave it to them, and now they have to deal with whatever they're given from that side. It's kind of the mean way of doing it. I've done that before with mixed results, including like protesting. I refuse to debate. It's unfair. Maybe you want to give them a little heads up if you're going to do something like that. But it's also kind of fun, like if they get a little bit more experience. But depending on when you want to do it and how you want to do it, it might be a good thing to think of how much time you want to give to it. You don't want to be too disruptive to your semester. You want to give it a week, well then you'll need more people speaking. So I worked with a theology professor that he developed a debate that has, I think, 8 people at a time doing it. And each pair of people is assigned a different permutation of a position on the topic. And they research that, and they all speak for 5 minutes, and they ask each other questions, and the rest of the class judges the debate. But any model is fine if you want to think about coming up with a model. Anything you want would be good. There's so many models. And if the news agencies can make up their own, I think speech experts can make up their own too. Okay, evaluation. This is the big one people don't think about. Of course, you're going to evaluate the debate. How well did they do? What grade are they going to get? But there's also other opportunities to reinforce some of the soft skills of public speaking hidden here, like listening, critical evaluation, and critical appraisal of oral messages. That's all here too. You can make that part of the assignment for the 10 or so students who aren't participating in the debate, or the 8 or so students who are participating. You can have evaluation by peers of the individual speakers, something you probably already do in your course, I would think. Evaluation by peers of the case or the evidence for each side. So you could say, you're going to be the opposition critique today, and if you did opposition last time, you're going to be proposition this time. Have them do several different tasks at once. So speech evaluation, say, which side, what do you think about that side's case apart from what happened in the debate? Do you think they had a good case or not? What was missing? How could it be better? What did you think was the big missing part of it? And then finally, evaluation by peers of the debate as a whole. Did it move them? I often talk in debate in terms of the sports metaphor that debate is often not about touchdowns or scoring, but about how much yardage you got. So, did they move you more down the field than you expected to be moved by their speeches? So a lot of these topics we'll have an opinion on already. It's a rare thing if someone can get up in a school speech and change your mind. You're like, oh my God, I've been against marijuana all my life. The student gave a speech and now I have to reevaluate everything I've ever done. This never happened. So the idea is to think about moving. Did that move them in a way they were not expecting? That's a really cool thing to think about. Okay, so finally I'll close with some assumptions about debate that we have and some ways I want you to think about debate in a more radical way. So we started with the radical idea, what happens if we don't think of students as problems to be solved, but as problem solvers with us in cooperation. Traditional model of debate is we come up with a topic, we research it, and then we have the debate. Traditional model. What happens if we play with these terms? What if we do research, come up with a good topic, and then debate it? How does that change things? What would your assignment look like if you modeled it that way? What happens if we come up with a topic, and then we have the debate right away? Just based on what they know and think. Then we talk about, say, what would have made that debate better? This creates a research assignment for the students that then they go and do, and then they represent that debate. That is the most amazing thing. I do that all the time. It's so cool. Because they'll get up and debate it, and then they'll say, I really thought I had it squared away, but I really felt pretty bad up there that I didn't have enough information, or I didn't know these things. And the whole class is like, yeah, what is that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Why don't we research it and come back and report our findings? We break it up. You go to the library, research this, and everybody gives a little speech about it, a little presentation about it. Then through those presentations, taking notes on them, we have another debate, same topic, but with more information that was governed by what became salient in the course of the debate. The perfect model, the ideal model of debate for me is this, which actually is a loop. I didn't really want to put the arrow in there because it was so tacky. But presentation, research, presentation, research, presentation, research. And this weird model of debate, actually, if you think about it, is the model of professional life that our students are going to have, isn't it? If they're an attorney, if they're in the medical field, if they're in sales. This model is the model of what students are going to be doing with their oral education. Presentation, research, presentation, research. They're going to feed into each other. So why not get debate in there early and get them comfortable with making decisions when they are uncertain and do not have all the facts they'd like to have. Any questions? Happy to take them all.
Just blow everyone's mind.
That's why they pay me this place is paying me $1,000 a year. We're in St. John's, I make $1,000 a year. No, it's unbelievable. But it's true, I'm $1,000 a year. Yes?
I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm teaching public speaking, and how one would fit the debating into the class.
Yeah.
And because everything is so timed and midterms, and then there's.
Yeah, I mean.
So I just would like to do it, but I don't know how it could be done.
I mean, it's a big challenge. I mean, that's why I say think of it as a challenge of replacing one major assignment. Because it's really not sustainable to add it as an extra thing. Because then everyone's going to be, you're going to do short service to an important speech. Students are going to be frustrated. They're like, we didn't have time to do, and then we have to meet for this debate, and we give us a day, and we all work, and you're going to get all that kind of stuff. So replacing an assignment. But which assignment to replace? Persuasion seems the most logical choice, but then you probably immediately feel panicked because persuasion is one of the most important modalities that we teach. But if you think of a way to maybe accomplish, that's why the purpose is very important to think of. Can I accomplish those educational goals or outcome goals of my students through this? Can I do that? And the more you think about it, you might say, yeah, I can. And I actually might be able to accomplish it better than hearing another round of speeches about gun rights, marijuana, animal abuse, real controversial things. Like, you always have that student stand up and say, I can't believe that nobody in here is defending the right to abuse animals. I feel personally offended. I mean, it's not gonna happen. They always pick safe topics that everyone agrees to, and everyone's like, oh, that was so good. And the imaginary audience will never be it. So you might be able to do that, but it's a tough thing. And it's something you want to spend some time thinking about. You might not want to include it starting this week, but maybe next semester. Or maybe at the end of the term, you might consider it as a final exam. I've had people do that before. And other subjects have trouble with this too. I've done debates for theology, for scientific inquiry. Is that a course? Yeah. Scientific inquiry. I've had French and Spanish teachers do it. And most interestingly, an accounting teacher over in Tobin wanted to do debates. And his was the most interesting, was debates about ethics for accountants, about situations where something could be put in the gain column of a company's books, technically, but should it be? And in accounting, this is not taught. They teach them how to do it technically. So this is how Enron things like that. It's like, well, technically, you know, converting profit to loss, loss to gain. You know, rhetorical alchemy. Lead and gold, we can do it.
Steve, one thing that happened in class, and I don't do it ordinarily, I had students who were very interested in the same topic, and it was same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
One of the students was staunch Roman Catholic, opposed to same-sex marriage. The other student was quite liberal, and they were friends. And so they themselves came to me and asked, could we do a debate? And it was, because each of them would have done a persuasive speech.
Right.
And it was beautiful, just beautiful. With no interference from me other than to say, now how do you plan to handle this? And they worked it out.
That gives me an idea for a pretty cool model where you have the students affiliate in groups and then negotiate what their topic's going to be, make their own format, and then you don't have the complaints. You know, well, you guys came up with the format. It's kind of a learning moment too when they think they have a really good format. It's unsatisfying. You know, so I mean the analogy, you know, the SAT analogies. It might have been, for me, it's been a while since I've seen the SAT analogy. But I put, you know, they'll usually pick a model from TV news. So a TV news debate, debate, NASCAR, driving. I think that analogy holds up. Because all the things, it looks like driving. There's cars involved. People are steering them, but it has zero to do with everyday functioning debate, what you see on TV. And most people watch it because it's a high risk of accidents. They don't watch it for the success, they watch it for the mistakes. Nobody will admit that because it's a horrible, violent, evil, thoughtless way to watch the thing. And I think a lot of people watch it. To see the cars slam into each other. You watch political debates, right? I don't like to admit it.
I had a class that wanted to debate one semester, and we talked about it, but we ended up doing this in the persuasive modality. I had them give topics. We put a bunch of topics on the board so that we had more than we would have. We split it into pairs, and they were choosing their topic, a person pro and against, and they literally chose the topics, chose who was going with which one, and they ran that setup. But not everybody's wanted to do that. But this particular class did, and so we did concentrate a little more on debate style because they asked for it specifically.
Yeah, you know, I think it's good. You know, listening to the students is good too. Giving them some control over what the assignment looks like is good. Debate lends itself to that a lot more than some of the other modalities that we teach. And that's probably good. Like, we wouldn't want them to come up with the criteria for the informative speech. You know, everybody knows, right? We want them to maybe do a little investigating.
No one does that.
Yeah, right. There's this the debate seems to lend itself to that because it's something that I think for American students, for the most part, comes naturally as a thing we do, that as a way to solve problems and engage them. You go to some other countries and it's like a real problem if a debate happens. It's in many different ways. But they just don't have the culture for it. And it's a tough sell. But yeah, that's good too. And also, you know, and then some classes, most classes will be like, I don't want to debate, I don't want to yell at each other, I don't want to do this. But then after they do it, they'll be like, wow, that was great. But the trick is to lower the stakes about being wrong. I forget who said that. Students don't want to be wrong. It's like the worst thing in our society to be wrong. It's better in our society to be dumb than to be wrong. Oh, computers, I don't know. Instead of, I'm wrong about how the computer operates, which is like, oh God. Or I'm not political, ha ha ha. This kind of thing is self-defense to the stakes being incredibly high in our society for what's good. So lowering that and saying, here's what we're going to do, and it's step by step, and all that, it lets the students be very comfortable that they can do their job and get away with it. So I was just in Japan at the Japanese Debate Association conference, and in Japan, for the past 5 or 6 years, they've been pushing a format of debate for competitive purposes called Enda, which is 4 versus 4. In Japan, debate is a very difficult thing to sell to teachers and to students because of all these cultural reasons. But Henda is really good because each person has a very clear job that they have to do. And if they don't do it, then their team and their friends are going to be in trouble in the debate and not do very well. So it puts them together like I have to help out my equals, the people I'm with, and my community, and then I also have to do this job, and the teacher's telling me to do it, so everything's fine. I'm not speaking in a hostile way to somebody who's above me in class year or age or in the family hierarchy. So it eliminates all those things. It's a really smart kind of way to do it. You can do that too. You can come up with your own format where everyone's like, you have 3 jobs. If you do those, you'll get an A. Okay, great. You have 2 jobs. Okay, great. And everyone does their speech. You can make it as formal as you want. Great. You can make it informal too if you want to play with the fire. Like I like to do. Sheldon and
I handle the problem of inserting a debate, the debate aspect into it as follows, that it would come up in the persuasive speech, right? So what I say to my students is, customarily, whenever you're delivering a persuasive speech, you normally have an opponent. You don't have to deliver persuasive speeches to people. Most of your audience, if you have an audience, most people are on your side to begin with. I mean, so when you have a persuasive speech, you normally have an opponent. And you're going to leave your opponent the task of giving the opposite point of view. But if you have to deliver a persuasive speech with no opponent, then what do you do? You just can't give one point of view. So what I tell them is, I say to them, look, what I told you. You have no opponent. But you have to give credit to the fact that there's an opposing point of view. So in an 8-minute speech, 7 or 8 minute speech, you devoted a minute or 2 at the beginning to the other point of view. You simply say, you start off by saying, this is a persuasive speech. Customarily, I would have an opponent, but I don't. So I'm going to tell you what the other side thinks. And having told you that, I'll tell you why I think you should follow my point of view. And that's the way it could be done.
Yeah, I think that's very smart. Very good.
Steve, thank you very much.
You're welcome.